Greetings, everyone. My name is Miriam Husna. I am an energy worker and an intuitive and an earth steward. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about a panel conversation that I hosted and facilitated with a dear friend of mine a few weeks ago. And I'm doing an intro to the conversation because I want to just tell you a little bit about the intention behind why we brought this group of people together and sort of like what we desire to talk about. So the kind of overarching theme within the conversation is, what is your role in the revolution? And I'm sure many of you have been deeply impacted on many different levels by all of the turmoil that is going on in the world, and everywhere from the Middle East to Ukraine to Congo to Sudan. And we're all trying to find our voice kind of within this in the human family. And so I wanted to bring together a group of people that I have a relationship with, that I'm in community with, to talk about the different roles and talk about the different callings that we have during times of great change and during times of great uprising and potentially times of revolution. And so this group was a combination of some people who are deeply immersed and would probably consider themselves to be on the front lines of this work, and their role has a very activist kind of flavor to it. Also, those who are academic in their own right, as well as I brought in a nervous system specialist, I brought in a farmer, and I wanted to just have everyone talk about sort of how they show up and what that showing up looks like. And you'll see in the conversation that emotions were really high. Not everyone was necessarily on the same page as far as, what roles everyone should be playing, right? And I just want to say that what I love about this conversation is that kind of the point of it was to say that we don't all have to see things the same way. We don't all have to have the exact same perspective. We don't all have to have received the exact same call in order to be in community, in order to be having these kinds of conversations. My hope is that through these kinds of conversations, we are all kind of interrogating our role. We're all checking it and seeing if we're moving from a place of an old playbook or an old broken record that might be ready to be retired, or if we are truly allowing the moment itself to initiate us and transform us, and that we are in response to the moment, right? So you may hear some things from the different panelists that you totally resonate with and totally agree with. You may hear some things that you disagree with. I definitely had that experience of both like deeply resonating and also not agreeing with certain things. But my hope overall through sharing this with you is to be able to recognize that there is such a thing as healthy conflict, and conflict can be life-giving, and experiencing other people not agreeing with your perspective, and how do we still relate? How do we still show up? How do we maybe even support people who may think that how we're showing up isn't correct or isn't right, and yet we still want to be in relationship with these people, and we still ultimately want to support them, right? There's some people have the perspective that there is no not on the front lines, that everyone is supposed to be on the front lines, right? And there's other people that are very, very clear that their role may be a more silent role, it may be a more internal role. And classically, we have always had sort of these monks that came down into the village and deeply engaged with people and being in service in that way. And we also have the monks that their role was to meditate in the cave and radiate and broadcast and generate certain types of healing energy on the planet that could then be utilized and directed in a more action-oriented way. I personally believe that I'm here to do both. And my sense of this is kind of that a foot in both worlds kind of syndrome. But there have definitely been times when I was absolutely called to be more silent, times when I was called to be the witness, times when I was called to be the innovator, times when I was called to protest, and various stages of my life as I have moved through my spiritual path. So I would encourage you not just to look for those points of trying to get someone else to kind of confirm your positionality, but instead to be with the tensions, and as my teacher calls the tensions and contradictions, be with these places of kind of like dissonance within ourselves so that we can all grow and we can all expand and we can all find new ways to show up that are deeply authentic and that are deeply in response to the moment itself. I want to also say that it is very important when we're looking at systems of oppression that we are focusing on those who are being oppressed and centering their voices. So I want to say that this conversation was not that. This is a little bit of a separate conversation, although I believe that this conversation is in service to that work. This, again, the conversation was meant to be about how do we understand our roles? How do we understand our callings? How do we understand our dharma? And how can we find our voice and our authentic way of being in service? So I hope that you enjoy this conversation and that you get something from it. And at the very least, if you know my work, I encourage you to use your tools. I encourage you to notice when someone's speaking, if that energy is making you feel collapsed, if it's making you want to shrink. Notice if that energy is making you feel activated. And just take note and be with that and understand that everyone on the panel is running their energy in a very, very different style. That will be a whole different conversation, but just notice, just pay attention. And even if someone's running their energy in a way that is not your style, see if you're able to move through that and get to the heart of what they're saying. Right? Lots of invitations here, hopefully a few confirmations. And as always, just grateful to be on this path with all of you. Take care. Greetings and welcome, everyone. My name is Miriam Husna, and I am joined with a few dear friends today, and we're going to be embarking on a conversation that my hope is to essentially invite people more deeply into this moment. For those of you that are not familiar with who I am and my work, I work in the field of energy medicine, which means I get to work on people's energy field and energy system and offer healing, as well as training people in how to do energy healing. And I've been doing personal healing, group healing, working with people's energy system for the last several weeks in relationship to what we're seeing going on in the world right now. There's a tremendous amount of anger, of heartbreak, of people feeling completely stunned, people feeling shocked, people at their emotional capacity. I see people being hijacked, having their limbic system hijacked, acting out from frightened and younger parts of their personality, being fragmented. I'm seeing issues with rigidity, inflexibility, and the inability to be curious and vulnerable and humble. And I'm seeing this big upsurge of apathy and just this sort of deadening of the senses. And this, sort of operating from a business as usual, sort of robotic Groundhog's Day kind of motion. And what that says to me is that people are operating in fear and people are operating in trauma, which makes sense to me. And at the same time, my hope is to invite people back into aliveness and to invite people back into connection and to move out of this place of despondency and to become more deeply engaged. I'm also seeing a tremendous amount of spiritual bypassing, especially in the spiritual community right now. And this is, to me, a really big issue. So when I look at the energy of spiritual bypassing, what I recognize is an inability to be with our own pain and suffering. And therefore, that produces an inability to be a witness to other people's suffering. And coming up with excuses for that, right? And coming up with validations for that. So what I'm hoping to do, again, this is my hope and my intention, is to have a conversation where we can start to support people coming out of that functional freeze and being more engaged with this moment, because this moment is asking for a tremendous amount from us. It's asking for us to grow. It's asking for us to change. It's asking for us to address social injustice, war, death, violence, corruption. So how can we possibly deal with the reality of our world right now? For many people who are waking up and just starting to become aware of the Palestinian struggle, many people have been doing this work for a very long time, and I'm very excited to introduce my guest soon as to know more about them. But this struggle for liberation of the Palestinian people is in many ways very connected to decolonial work all around the world. And it is my belief that the Palestinian struggle has many parallels with the work that I do, which is the work of earth stewardship, and which is connecting people back to their bodies, and connecting to the earth so that we can address the ways that humans have harmed the natural world. So when I hear things about ancient olive trees being uprooted, I'm deeply concerned. And for me, this is not just about the human loss of life. It is also about the realms and the kingdoms of beings, of nature spirits, and the unseen realms that are also deeply impacted by this work. And for me, as a mother, as a concerned human, my question in this moment, as I've been studying systems of oppression, is how can we come together to build more resiliency? How can we come together to build our somatic capacity, to build our nervous system strength? Because it's going to require us getting stronger. So I personally am recommitting myself to this work. And because I know this work is done in community, I have brought some guests. And the open challenge and the invitation in this moment is to expand our capacity to embody what we know. It's one thing to have these concepts or ideologies or ways that we have looked at history and said, oh, if I was alive during that time, this is what I would have done. But this is a moment where this is real. And we have the opportunity and the profound challenge to become more human right now. And it's really, to me, it's about our response and our response that defines us. And to me, the response that is being asked of me is to become a wiser, kinder version of myself. And that means that I have to address my own pain and my own trauma and my own blocks to that, and my own feelings and my own anger and my own frustration and my own disappointment and my own shock. And what I know is that this is not just about finding the right answers. It's also about the questions that we ask, because life is not something that is fixed. And life is about a movement, and there is no final answer. So to me, it's about learning how to respond rather than react, and responding in a new way. And it's so easy to forget ourselves in this and to have such an outward focus because there's such a great need right now. And it's also very easy to completely center ourselves. And it's important for me to learn how to address the ways that life is asking me to grow, and to make space for that, and to put on my own oxygen mask first. And then from that place, to bring something into the conversation, to bring something into the moment that in some small way may be in service. So to me, this is how the divine plan gets born on earth. I know that there are many people who are concerned, and I know that many people are asking, how can I help? So one of the key questions that we're going to be asking in this conversation within this group is, what is your role in the revolution? And one of the things that I think is very important is to get past our personal small self and our personal feelings, and recognizing that a lot of our feelings have been conditioned by years and years of propaganda. So for me, I believe that I have a moral, spiritual, and human obligation to serve and to help. So for me, this moment is about coming into a deeper level of responsiveness within myself so that I can show up in service. So I'm going to ask for us to take a moment of silence. And the invitation in that moment of silence is a silent witnessing. Perhaps you haven't felt you've had the space to witness all of the pain that we're seeing. Perhaps because you feel that you need to take a particular stance at this moment in time. You haven't allowed yourself to witness the deep amount of pain that is being experienced. For whatever that is, you can lay that down just for a moment. And the invitation into the witnessing is not to take it on, not to pull it into your own space, but to, one, validate and recognize your own pain. And then from that place, be able to acknowledge and witness the pain that others are experiencing in this moment. For me, I'm going to be focusing on the pain that is being experienced by the children in Palestine, and also the mothers, as well as the earth right now. Wherever your focus takes you, please know that that is your journey and your work. So we're just going to take a moment right now of being in silence. Thank you. So I'm going to be bringing in my dear friend and collaborator, Taya Ma, who is supporting this beautiful conversation with her presence. Welcome, dear Taya.
Thank you so much, Mariam. I'm so grateful to be in this shared weaving with you. As Mariam said, I'm Taya Shir, and I approach our conversation today from my orientation as a professor of organic multi-religious ritual, a weaver of Jewish and Sufi Muslim spiritual community committed to counter-oppressive devotion, and from my path practicing and teaching in realms of embodied presence and in Jewish ancestral healing. I'm so honored to be amidst this exquisite company, such a fiercely committed and heart-centered circle here as we gather in conversation and exploration of how to show up in these immense times with Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb, Dr. Omid Safi, Dr. Teresa Lau, and Wali Via, each of whom bring such important perspective and experience and heart and care to our focus today. Rabbi Lynn Gottlieb is in her 50th year as a rabbi and was one of the first women to become a rabbi in Jewish history. She's a human rights activist, a pathfinding Jewish feminist, artist, educator, and storyteller. And she engages in multi-faith, intergenerational, and multicultural organizing in solidarity with racial, indigenous, gender justice, and Palestinian liberation struggles. Rabbi Lynn sits on the Rabbinic Council of Jewish Voice for Peace and is board chair of Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity. Her books include Peace Primer 2 and She Who Dwells Within, a Feminist Vision of Renewed Judaism, and Trail Guide to the Torah of Nonviolence. Dr. Omid Safi is a Sufi teacher, a professor of Islamic and Middle Eastern studies at Duke University, and a columnist for On Being. He's a leading Muslim public intellectual, appearing often on news outlets including PBS, BBC, and CNN. Brother Omid guides journeys in Turkey, Morocco, and beyond, and offers online courses open to spiritual seekers of all backgrounds. He has a podcast called Sufi Heart, and his books include Memories of Muhammad and Radical Love, teachings from the Islamic mystical tradition. Dr. Teresa Lau is a chiropractor specializing in the energy of alignment, somatics, and awakening, with a 15-year practice in Berkeley, California. Dr. Teresa has a passion for the beauty and fullness life has to offer and is committed to awakening the embodied expression of aliveness through quantum community transformation and healing. Dr. Teresa's work is to cultivate a world of radical belonging through body-based healing and creative collective learning space that reclaims our individual and relational humanity. And Wally Villa lectures on biodynamic farming, compost, and sustainable agriculture internationally, and has been following the Sufi path since 1978. He serves a number of roles within the Anayati Sufi order, including as vice president of Ziraat, responding to the earth. Wally has spent his adult life farming organically and biodynamically at a commercial scale and is dedicated to providing opportunities for people to deepen their spiritual lives, including their relationship with the natural world, to foster the earth's healing. It is such an immense blessing to be here with each of you. Thank you for taking the time and care to be with us in this conversation. As Mariam mentioned, our guiding question for the panel today is, what is your role in the revolution? Our panelists will begin their sharing inside of this frame, and then we'll turn attention to each of them with specific questions guided to them and their experience and commitments. We'll begin here first with Rabbi Lynn. Rabbi Lynn, what is your role in the revolution?
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here. Before I begin, I want to begin in the way that I, as a Shomeret Shalom, as someone who practices the discipline of the Torah of nonviolence, begins. There is no way to say this except in the revolution. And of course, we have to ask what revolution we're talking about. For me, that is a revolution of nonviolence. I cannot begin without grieving, just really expressing the grief that so many people are holding, that I am holding. I want to acknowledge I'm not a Palestinian. And I wish my friends were here to join this panel. So first, I ask their forgiveness and pray that I'm able to articulate some of which I have heard on the front lines for the last 56 years of journeying to Palestine and to Lebanon and Sabra and Shatila, and to Gaza for the Gaza Freedom March, and here on Turtle Island, the United States, in the Palestinian diaspora, and my role as a woman rabbi, which also placed me in front of thousands of Jewish communities. So I want to share this prayer that being in the revolution means being able to grieve loudly. And there is a prayer called Farewell to the Beloved Guests. And in this moment, we are saying farewell to so many, many thousands upon thousands, an immeasurable amount of beloved guests who were born into this life and who died in the fires of war and hatred and the inability for people to make peace with each other. I'll sing part of this song to honor them. This is a Romanian song that was preserved by Mujikash. And I invite you to imagine taking a breath and linking your golden thread to those souls who are now departing with such a short time here on this earth, who came to be a gift to this life and who were denied the opportunity to grow up and enjoy the blessings of love and life and earth and friendship and creativity. I invite you to lift your hands, to take a breath, and to hold these souls in your heart. The souls that were lost in Israel, which include Jewish people, Palestinians, Filipinos, North Africans, Muslims, Christians, and Jews. And the souls who are departing, who are Palestinians and frontline workers in the West Bank and in Gaza. Adonai li velo ira, velo ira. Adonai li velo ira, velo ira. Ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la 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 ya la 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 ya la la ya la la ya la 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 ya la. I'm in mourning right now. I'm literally sitting Shiva for friends, So this is truly a somatic experience of just being so bereft. And I want to honor all of the amazing teachers upon whose shoulders I stand, including living teacher, Reverend James Lawson, my teacher, may his memory be a blessing, Rabbi Everett Gendler, and the thousands of Palestinians and Jews I have met, and people from the African American community, from the indigenous community, from the Southeast Asian community, everyone who has, in spite of profound suffering at the hands of systemic violence, chosen life, and not only chosen life, but chosen to strategize with the power of nonviolence, which many people call a force more powerful. So I stand in that revolution, a revolution that began during the period of enslavement in the United States, as well as from the great teacher Gandhiji and so many others who fought. As I look at this world, how can I change what exists? How can I dismantle injustice? And how can I build a movement based on the values that I know all of us cherish? And this requires strategy. It requires movement building. It requires direct action. And the direct action can be in 10,000 different ways. It's not a single way. And to understand what a particular moment requires. This moment requires the entire world rising up and saying, cease fire. Because until we cease fire, we cannot engage all the amazing tools that we have created over years, over centuries, to begin the process of healing, because it's difficult to engage these processes when you are huddled with all of your family waiting to die. So this is a moment where we need widespread awakening for all of us to say, we refuse to hurt each other, and we will find different ways to heal the wounds. But we cannot do that without understanding the nature of systemic violence and how it impacts us. We cannot do that without centering directly impacted people's experience and allow their wisdom, creativity of responses to direct violence to be heard and to be understood. And we cannot do this without direct action and a process of creative evaluating and learning from the past as we look across culture and religion and all of the identities to see who is being harmed and what they have to say and how we can be in solidarity with that. There is no safety for Jews without the safety of Palestinians. I will say it that simply. We will never be safe without understanding that Palestinians are our siblings, pretty much our direct siblings, probably the closest siblings that we have in this life. We will never have safety without dismantling apartheid. We will never have safety without understanding that we are, as we say in sign language, we are one. We are all connected. And so my place in the revolution has been to travel to Palestine since 1966, to learn about Nakba, catastrophe, and to go back again and again and again, and to build delegations and to create movements and to support people in their efforts to come together to stand for the unity of humanity and how to struggle in ways that heal all of us while we dismantle the structures of oppression. And I pray that in this moment, all of our voices will accomplish ceasefire, and we will find our place in the revolution so that we can bring about the world we wish to see. Thank you.
May it be so. Thank you so much, Rabbi Lynn, for what you've shared and for all of your work. And we turn now to Brother Omid. Brother Omid, it's such a gift to be with you. What is your role in the revolution?
As a young boy, I lived through a revolution in Iran, which had soaring rhetoric and utopian visions, which very quickly became quite dystopian. And many of the very same systems and institutions and structures that people were marching against ended up enduring into the new system. So at times, I'm apprehensive about words like revolution, unless, as Rabbi Lynn said, not only are you specific about which revolution, but you're also clear about the question of method. Because our means and our ends are prefigured in one another. And here's the small little contribution that I would love to be a part of. And it has to do, of course, with what my teachers have taught me about what love looks like in action. I'm saddened and disappointed when I see a lot of quote unquote spiritual teachers who don't seem to have a mumbling word to say about the suffering of some of the poorest people on earth. Who have been subject to an ethnic cleansing, 75 years old and under occupation since before I was born. I wonder, what do these words love and spirituality mean in that context, when they're so easily co-opted by a kind of consumerist capitalist model of quote unquote self-fulfillment for people who are already living relatively privileged lives. And I come back to love. Yes, I'm a universalist. I benefit from the teachings of Rabbi Heschel and Vincent Harding and Martin King, Buddhism, Gandhiji, and others. But I'm also a Muslim boy. My roots, as we say down south, are in this tradition. And you can receive rain that comes from the sky, but you also need to have some roots. And if you're unrooted, then it's easy for you to get toppled over. And this is not a time to allow ourselves or fellow people that we love and care about to be toppled over. So my roots are in that Quranic context of Inna Allaha ya'muru bil adli wal ihsan. God commands us to love and justice. And of course, we hear this in so many beautiful spiritual traditions, that love is not just divine, love is God. Love is not even an attribute of God, it is the very being of Allah. there's nothing more godly and godlike than love. We are never more like God than when we love. But this love is not vague and abstract. This love is actually quite embodied. It's quite tied to the bodies. And if you love the folk, you cannot bear to be silent when you see them intentionally and systematically put in a context where they're on a starvation diet. When not only is a settler colonial regime ethnically cleansing and putting people in an open air concentration camp, as human rights groups call it, but they allow just a trickle of food in so that people starve but do not die. How am I supposed to love the folk if I don't love their bodies? How am I supposed to love the folk if I don't love their wrinkled stomachs, as Dr. King called it? How am I supposed to love the folk if I don't love their sense of safety, dignity, and integrity? So in all of our traditions, we've got something about when love comes to public, we call it justice. And I'm grateful for the fact that I've also had teachers who've tried to instill in me, especially when as a young man, I was quite moved by a lot of Marxist and socialist and liberationist kind of readings, to say, everything you say about the critique is right. This is the voice of Uncle Vincent Harding, that I keep very close to my heart. He would always tell me, everything you say about your critique is right, but you got to give people hope that through love, we can transform this world. And so he was a reminder that when that same love, and you can see it as an ocean that has waves that come and recede, if instead of it moving outward to the world as justice, if it moves inward, it would have to show up as tenderness. And that's part of this small way in which I hope to be a supporter, an amplifier. This is not something that I made up. Teachers and sages and everyday ordinary folk who will never have names go down in history books. They've been living this. They've been embodying this. I was watching the video of an 8-year-old boy from Gaza. He lived, at least at the time of when the video was shot. Numbers never do it justice. And by the time people watch this numbers, like some demonic figure is going to keep rising and rising. As of today, it's around 3,500 babies. He was one of the ones who had lived, and he was sitting on a rubble that used to be his home. And he was reciting verses of the Quran, in which God says to people, we're going to test you with a touch of fear and famine and the loss of your property and life and crops. So give good news. وَبَشِّرَ الصَّابِرِينَ. Give good news to those who persevere. And then he was reciting, الَّذِينَ إِذَا أَصَابَتْهُمْ مُصِيبَةٌ قَالُوا إِنَّا لِلَّهِ وَإِنَّا إِلَيْهِ رَاجِعُونَ. These are the ones who, when they're struck by a calamity, they just say, we are coming from God and we're always returning to God. These are the ones who will receive blessings, salawat, from their loving Lord and mercy. And I'm looking at this 8-year-old boy going, here I am sitting an ocean away in a part of the world where my ancestral connection is a little bit more tenuous. Right? My great, great, great great-great-grandfather is Abraham. I am a child of the Prophet Muhammad, and Jesus and Moses are my uncles. But I have not been the one to water those olive groves, and I have not been the ones who has been ethnically cleansed and lived under occupation, and I am not the one who for 2,000 years has been singing about a return to Jerusalem while in exile. And yet, this is shattering for me, and it's not about me. So here's the two truths that I'm holding. It's not the Palestinian narrative and the Israeli narrative. It's something different. It is, what do we do with the fact that every single life is luminous? Every single life is sacred. Every single life is precious. Every little baby, Israeli, Palestinian, Chinese, Korean, South African, maybe even American, is made in the image of God, has the breath of God breathed into them. Period, full stop. And there is a vast asymmetry of power, of privilege, of concern that is shown by the powerful forces in this world. And that concern oftentimes maps along racial and colonial lines. So I can grieve and mourn, and I do, the 1,400 Israeli families who are mourning their dead. And if I wanted to, I could watch CNN and I could see their mothers and I could see their pictures and I could know their names and I could learn about their hopes and their dreams. There is no equivalence of that on the Palestinian side. Even people who've been glued to media would be hard-pressed to name 5 Palestinians who have been killed, 5 out of the 10,000, 5 of these precious babies, every single one of them a child of God. So those are the two truths that with the people who want to build a different world, I want us to hold together. How do we hang on to that luminosity of every single life and shining a light squarely, unflinchingly, unapologetically on the racial and colonial asymmetry of the worth and value of life that is afforded in this unjust world that we have both inherited and are living in, but may we not pass it on to our babies.
Thank you so much, Brother Omid, for what you've shared. Mariam, what is your role in the revolution?
I'm so thankful to be with you all. I'm so grateful for everything that you all are bringing to the conversation. Still assimilating and still processing and still percolating. And at the same time, something in me that deeply wants to be expressed and shared about my role and my work. And my role in my work is actually something that is very new for me and feels very vulnerable to be stepping into and feels very vulnerable to be talking about it. In other contexts, I probably would wait until it was a lot more polished and a lot more fleshed out to share it forth. And at the same time, I feel that it's vital to bring this particular strand into the conversation, because my role in the revolution is to be in constant communication with the earth and with nature and with the beings who are unseen, who are walking with humans, to make sure that they have a voice as well, because they are a part of this conversation as well. they are deeply impacted as well. And they are often forgotten because humans are often centered. And that makes sense right now. That makes sense to me right now. But there are many parts of our family that we are not recognizing are also impacted. And it's my duty and it's my vow and it's my responsibility to bring them into the conversation. And I see the need for speaking out. And I also see the need for being quiet. I also see the need for deep listening. Because if I don't take a moment to turn within, all I'm doing is allowing everything that I'm hearing from everyone else to distort my truth. So it requires me to listen, to quiet my own noise within myself, to take everything that I'm receiving from the people that are most deeply impacted, from the people that have been doing this way longer than me, and to also get really quiet to be able to hear what the earth is asking. Because the earth is a part of this conversation, and the earth has something to say at this time. And my instructions and my directions come from being in a deep relationship with humans, but also with the more than human kingdoms and the more than human realms. And many beings who are in the invisible realms want to work with humans, want to be in relationship with humans, want to heal what's happening, and many do not. And understandably so. There are many beings on the earth that feel that humans are a cancer to this planet. So my role in the revolution is to continue to build relationship with these beings and to ask them to teach us how to be human. We have all of these human ideas about what peace means, about what freedom means. You know, these conversations have been happening since the beginning of time. But what I do know is that if I go to the ocean and I sit quietly and I ask, what is peace? That not only will I receive an answer, but that I will receive an attunement. And when I go to the mountains and I say, what is peace? You've been here longer than any of us have been. What is peace? And if I get quiet, that I can receive a healing and a blessing and guidance and instructions. So my role is to translate those messages and to be in relationship with land. And from that place to focus all of my energy into whatever those instructions are. And if those instructions include me not engaging with public discourse and focusing on healing on the ground, on the land, and bringing groups of people to do remote healing with the children in Gaza, that's what I have to do. My role is to be a clear channel, because there's a lot of activism happening right now, but there's a lot of disembodied activism. And there's a lot of activism that doesn't have roots in earth. And I don't believe that we have access to, personally, I don't believe that I have access in my body to the type of love that is required. I believe I have to become an instrument and a channel and a vessel for divine love, because this is going to require God's love to be expressed through us. I don't have enough love to be able to heal this. We have to be able to bring through healing from the earth, healing from these realms, because they've lived through all of it. And they are much more ancient and they are much more wise than us. So that's why I said, when I see ancient olive trees being uprooted, I'm deeply concerned, because I know that the force that is driving people's behavior, that force is anti-life. And that many people are channeling that energy and those forces and those destructive, nefarious forces because of their anger, because of their pain. So how do we start to learn what is driving our behaviors? And also to recognize that who we are, who we believe that we are within our own selves, we are a collaboration of many, many beings, many, many archetypes, many, many nature spirits. And the healing that we need, the transformation that we need, it's going to require us to be able to be in relationship with that, with life in that way, with life in that complex way. Because otherwise we end up being an unconscious channel for the energies that would gladly destroy all of humanity. But there are many forces of nature that are deeply committed to us, that are deeply in service to us. So my role in the revolution is to continue to build those bridges, build those relationships, and to teach humans how to work with nature and how to work with the earth. Because not only is it going to require the whole human family to heal this, it's going to require the entire family, which also consists of beings that are unseen. So we need many more intermediaries, many more people who can walk between these realms to be able to translate and build and heal these relationships, because it's going to require more than just humans. We do not have the answers clearly. So, you know, this corruption that we see in our world leaders, it is playing out in everyday interactions with people, with each other. And my role is to help people to understand that although you may think that what's happening over there is over there, it is happening in the way that you are interacting with people that you encounter every day, day to day, because you are feeding those forces. So my role, when I say my role, is to become a kinder, wiser person. I need to be able to embody that, and I need to be able to live that, and I need to be able to broadcast that and radiate that and reverberate that everywhere that I go, and with every person that I interact with, and with anyone that I think may be insignificant, the person who's delivering my mail, the person who I'm getting food from, the person who I'm picking this up from, you know, the children around me. All of these interactions play a role in what is happening. So when I talk about peace, right, part of my role is also to be in the tension of that conversation with people who are using the exact same words that I'm using, and they're not using them in the same way. They're using them to be disconnected, disengaged, and they're using them to bypass being with this moment. So my work in the so-called spiritual community, right? It's not to point out everyone's wrongdoings and how they're not doing enough. It's to invite and awaken and activate and catalyze and validate and say, I hear you, and we need to change. We need to wake up. We need to come together. We need to work together. So my last thing that I will say is also part of my role as a steward of the earth is to plant the seeds for what will come next. And that requires me to receive that guidance, again, from listening to the people that are most impacted, and then taking that back and being in relationship with the earth and listening to the earth and saying, what will you have me do? Where will you have me focus? And I'll say for me that the guidance that I've been given is to focus on protecting the children, because the children that are coming here now, that are here now, they are going to do something different. And it's going to require us as healers and practitioners to be able to address the trauma that is happening right now, to not let that stop them, to not let that get in the way of what they're here to do, and to recognize that the change will probably happen long after I'm gone, but to plant those seeds and nourish those seeds and not let those seeds get corrupted. So I will end there, and I will pass it on to one of my other friends.
Thank you so much, Mariam, for what you've shared. Dr. Teresa, what is your role in the revolution?
Thank you, Taya. Thank you to all of my new friends. Your hearts are so wide, and I feel so grateful to be in conversation with you. I think for me, my role in the revolution, as folks have said, whatever that means, I suppose, I think is in transition. I began a healing practice 20 years ago with the intention of connecting the work of justice with our own well-being and our bodies. I was young. I was in my early 20s, and I just knew that what me and my friends were doing was not the business. It was not going to get us there. It was going to get us killed slowly. And I've spent the last couple of decades in private practice, and I think my role has been to support people on the front lines, to create space for bodies to be found again, for nervous systems to find some respite, and for humans to come back into the flesh. It's been incredible work. It's been the best job in the world, I've said many times. I leave my day more energized and in relationship with life than when I started. And in the last couple of years, that has changed. It's become clear to me that we are less in need of healers to work with individuals and right right their ships, so to speak. And it's much more imperative that we understand how each of us is the healer, is the healing that we need in the world. And so I'm in transition. It's a move from working hands-on with bodies to coming into conversation with others in a desire to create relationship and community, and less so this sort of personal interaction and relationship, and much more so learning to develop the skills for cultivating and resourcing our differences. The differences that we have with each other, but also the differences that we have with ourselves, the ways that we protest when our body does something we don't want it to do, or we don't have time for, or doesn't fit with the plan for the day or the week. And I am in this place now of taking all that I have had the privilege to learn and be with the body, and ask what is needed of me. How can I play my role as it's transitioning into something else, play my role in creating the vibration of the world that we're moving toward, the world that is required, the world that we are making even as we're destroying this one. I think for me, this moment and the intensity of delusion, how so much is able to continue to move forward while the genocide is happening every day. I think it is shocking. It is startling to our human sensibilities, and we are so well practiced in moving past the shock, and so unpracticed in actually contending with what we are feeling and what we are knowing. And so for me, I am in discovery, I think, of this new role. I am probably more clear now in fulfilling my purpose in this life, even as the terrain and the specifics and the function that I might play shifts so quickly for me right now. And so I am again just deeply grateful to be a part of this conversation. I'm certain that the ways that we talk today are in fact a reverberation of the healing and the resolution of what we need. I'm clear that we are engaged with the problem and committed to the resolution. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Teresa. Wally, what is your role in the revolution?
Listening to all of you has broken my heart. But that can be a beautiful thing. When the heart is broken, it can be filled. And I feel both grief and immense love. So thank you. It seems to be the test that we're being given right now as humanity. How do we hold that grief? Give it witness. And at the same time, maintain some hope, a positivity, the fortitude to carry on amidst what seems like unwinnable odds. And yet there is hope. There's hope all around us if we have the eyes to see that hope. Before we opened this session, I went for a walk out here. You can see I'm fortunate to live in a beautiful on a rural farm, walking in the woods. And everywhere you look, it's a miracle. It's an absolute miracle. Every rotting leaf, every sprouting grass, every vein and every leaf is an absolute wonder. And we're living amidst that. We're part of that miracle. I believe we need to learn how to walk with eyes that see the beauty, the wonder that is around us. And as that fills us, it changes who we are. It changes how we relate to life. And when we look at each other, human to human, we see that each of us is a miracle too. When we recognize that, how can we be violent with one another? How can we not treat each other with compassion? There's inner and outer ways to participate in the revolution. Never underestimate the power of prayer. Some are meant for the front lines and action in the world, and some are meant to hold in their heart their deepest concern and their deepest love and their prayer. Both are equally valid and equally necessary. My work in my life has been with the earth. I'm a lifelong farmer, though now retired. And, specifically, there's been a number of ways that I guess I have a role in the revolution. It's really my role, I would say, is to help provide opportunities for people to connect deeply to the earth and their relationship, and hopefully see it as a sacred duty to walk in life in a beautiful way. Another thing that I've been doing for a couple of decades now is around North America, offering a ceremony for the healing of the earth. And I've done this with farmers. farmers have a very deep connection with life. And in ceremony, it's an opportunity for them to recognize their role as healers in what they do. And in ceremony, it's an opportunity for us to collectively bring our prayers together for the healing of the earth. And this has been very powerful for many people. Wonderful, wonderful thing. I also, as Tayama mentioned, serve in a role within the Anayatiya, my Sufi lineage, as helping direct the Ziraat activity. And Ziraat both uses agriculture symbolically to help one evolve on the spiritual path. And it also works to harmonize humanity with all the beings of the earth, seen and unseen. And just recently, a few of us within the Anayatiya have developed a program which will be launched here next spring called Earth Responders. And the idea of Earth Responders is both to attune to the earth, attune sympathetically, resonate with the earth, but also recognize the grief of being witness to what our earth is going through, and learning to support each other in holding that grief and developing a compassionate relationship with the earth. So I think that's what I have to share right now. Thank you.
Thank you so much for everyone's shares. I'm so deeply moved by everything and just the space to be able to come together in this way and have these conversations. Taya, my dear friend, what is your role in the revolution?
A few years ago, I was asked to serve as Jewish clergy for a week-long bearing witness retreat in Auschwitz-Birkenau. And I knew that this was perhaps one of the most important things that I might do, and also that it might destroy me. I did not know how I would have enough resource to do the showing upness that I imagined would be required to be guiding ceremony in a place of such immense devastation. And I called on all of my supports that I knew how to call on. And when we were there, this group of 90 participants from 15 countries, we were there in ceremony together. And on one of the first days, I was feeling weak, broken, like just not knowing how to orient well enough to hold space. And so I did what I would normally do in any time I needed to ground and resource. I took off my shoes. I put my feet on the earth in hopes of connecting with the blessing of the earth. And I had not anticipated the agony that I would feel putting my feet on the ground of that place. And I quickly put my shoes back on and spent the following days trying to put my pieces back together. And what I found is the only way, the absolute only way, all of these years later, with a really solid group of ceremonialists, the only way that I could show up in any kind of way that made sense and had me whole enough, composed enough to pray, was to attune to the immense support that I had and have in my life, the resource in my body, and the beauty that was available amidst the absolute devastation of that place. And I'm remembering a moment on our completion day where we, all of us, circled around, hands held, the ash pond in Birkenau, which is a place where it's understood that perhaps the remains of around 1 million people were placed. And we sung. We sung songs of grief. We sung songs of yearning. We sung songs of beauty and of love. And we placed flower petals in the ash pond. We sung to the waters, to each other, to spirit, to the souls who were murdered. And we placed flowers in the water. And in that moment, I understood something about how healing happens that I've understood in my mind and in the practice in my own body and in some of my communities. I came to understand what I've learned about healing happening not by focusing first or solely. I shouldn't say first, not by focusing only, except in moments of acute emergency, which we are currently in, on the places of fragment in the system, in the body, in the energy body, in the community body, but focusing, building our capacity to focus on resource, on positive resource, on support, on wellness in the system, in our body, in our energy body, in our community body, in our ancestral body, building capacity to attune to what is whole and to what is well, and to let that entrain the pockets of distress. And not in a way that is bypassing fragment or bypassing devastation, but as a way that, like, sometimes this is actually the medicine that we can bring, the balm that can create transformation, and finding the balance of attention is so key. And I say that in part because one of the ways that I am present in this time is in connecting as a movement chaplain, one might say, to those who are in action toward ceasefire, toward stopping genocide, toward ending US military financing of the Israeli military. And I'm continually receiving communication from my students, from my friends, from those I weave with who are heading into their version of the front lines, which in my circles is often anti-Zionist Jews heading to sit in, often meaning these 3 weeks, at least I'll say. And what matters to me is supporting folks in their showing upness, in their right action in the world, and also supporting them to be well enough resourced to do that if and as they are able. Like, we who are not experiencing bombs, we who have shelter, we who have food, those with resource and choosing to be in their responsibility of taking action. Also, my role is helping them lean in to their ancestral supports, to their supports in the more than human world, toward what their body needs, finding the balance of being well enough in these times that depletion can be par for the course if we don't find the right balance of showing upness for those who most need our voices right now, and showing upness for our own selves. So we, well, I won't even qualify it. I'll just say showing up here and showing up here. And for me, what matters also is supporting folks to help discern their roles. My hope and prayer is that those tuning into our conversation will be listening with an ear for, how can I find my place in this time? And not just resign to what I have done because it was comfortable or because it's what's familiar to me, but when I actually pay attention to both my gifts and my capacities and my positionality, what is possible and what is needed. And so one of my roles in this moment as a Jew who is also a US citizen is to using my voice to make it clear that destruction of Gaza if that happens, it is not happening in my name, and I will be speaking against that. And to be clear that if there is military funding on my taxpayers' dime, that is not something that I am agreeing with, and I'm taking action to change that. And so for me, in those positionalities, it matters to move in that way. And I have more positionalities. Someone who asks that we attune to our ancestors, our guides of blood and family lineage, and also our movement lineage ancestors, whose, as Rabbi Lynn spoke to at the very beginning of our conversation, and as Brother Omid brought in too, whose shoulders are we standing on? Who are our teachers, and how can we draw inspiration from them in this moment? And so for me, it matters to move in these ways. And my prayer is that those tuning in can find their voices, that you listening can find your voices and what is possible and aligned and true for you in this moment. And one more piece I'll speak in, given that I have the joy and the blessing and in this moment, the immense heart wrench of weaving multi-religious Jewish and Sufi Muslim spiritual community committed to counter-oppressive devotion, just really being curious about how we can show up for each other, how we can love each other, how we can listen deeply to each other and pray. The last prayer gathering that we had in our community was just before the power went out, before the Wi-Fi phone connections, communication in Gaza was cut by the Israeli military. And we had like all these prayers planned. And for me, I got there and was like, I have no words. Like at that moment, it was like, how can we speak? And so listening also for the emergence of what is true and needed in the moment, being willing to go off script is a permission that I'm needing more and more to give myself, to know that I may have some plan for how this should be. And these times are, who said this thing? These times are urgent, so we must slow down. I'm not sure who that quote is from, but it rings true for me so often now. And just tuning into what it's called for. And I'll complete there with gratitude to be in this circle and a part of this weaving. One more thing that I'm noticing in my role in this time, as when I post something on social media that is calling for a ceasefire or for Jews to be in clear solidarity, unwavering solidarity with Palestinian liberation, I'm receiving kickback from people who I respect, whose work I appreciate and have appreciated in the world. And they're sending me pretty intensely mean messages. And if I didn't know them, I would just not even read or respond to their messages. But these are people I know, whose work I have respected, who've impacted me in my life. And in that moment, what matters to me, and when I say these times are urgent, we must slow down, this is a moment where I'm slowing down, noticing, oh, how much my heart hurts when I read these messages, and being curious. And so my responses to them are consistently curious, like curious and warm, even though I don't agree with what they're saying and I have no intention to. How I've been responding is, I so appreciate the way, I'm so glad you wrote to me. I so appreciate the way XYZ thing, you impacted my life all those years ago, or I've so appreciated your book. I've so appreciated your music. And I really hear the ways our orientation in this time is different. I feel very clear in where I am, and I don't imagine we'll agree. And I'm wondering if there is some conversation we can have from a heart place that is generative. And each time I've done that, there's been such softening. And in the conversations that have ensued, I've prayed for the family members that they are scared for on the ground, which is usually what comes out in the conversations. And I know that like that's all we can do. We don't actually, the political conversation is not one where we have alignment on. And my desire is to remember that they are a human whose heart I care about, and to somehow not shut down in the face of the vitriol and the mean-spiritedness that is just floating through the interwebs and other conversations at this time. So returning to heart, returning to presence, returning to body, returning to possibility of transformation through bringing bringing capacity and positive resource to this moment. And I'm so grateful now in our conversation to turn attention to next layers of conversation with our phenomenal panelists. We'll come first now to you, Reblin. When our role isn't to be on the front lines, how can we still be deeply engaged? How can we be in allyship and solidarity with loved ones who are on the front lines? And how can we skillfully navigate propaganda, understand what is propaganda and what isn't?
Thank you so much for this challenging question. It is very important for all of us to maintain our inner compassion and not to let the vitriol and the hatred and the misinformation to penetrate deeply our own layers of compassion. So this is something to nurture within ourselves, everyone, to nurture your compassion. I like to work with a framework of denial. I can literally hear where people are on the spectrum of denial. It's all their fault, or nothing's happening that shouldn't be happening because it's all their fault. That, for instance, or I feel hopeless, there's nothing I can do about it. Or I'm the liberal with the ethics, and there's an equivalency, my suffering and your suffering. All of these, we can be schooled to understand, especially if we take a minute to study critical race theory. Big word, I realize, but we can understand where people are coming from, and that people who have privilege, which in this case are Jewish people, we have to turn the mirror back and to understand a few things. Number one, this is not the Holocaust of the Jews. This is not the Pale of Settlement. And the use of language about the Holocaust is really not appropriate in this moment, because people use that as a form of shielding and denial of the reality of Palestinians. And we have trapped ourselves in this box. And it is not it would be equivalent, for instance, if in this box, we decide the only way to keep ourselves safe is to hammer and kill and defeat other people, rather than understanding an analysis of systemic violence, which anti-Semitism is part of. And of course, this moment is bringing some of those forces to light. And Palestinians and so many other people, Palestinians are now bearing the brunt of the unhealed trauma that Jews are carrying from the Holocaust. And we are seeing that if one is not committed to the revolution of nonviolence, it's easy to go to the side of militarism. There's something I want to say in this too. Palestinians are indigenous to this land as well. We are not the only ones. We are not the exclusive indigeneity, holders of indigeneity, especially those of us who haven't had family there in the last 2,000 years. We are a diaspora people. And so when we shut ourselves off in the denial, but we're indigenous, we have to remember that Palestinians are also indigenous to this holy land. I'm a storyteller. I've made my living as a storyteller. And I believe that we have to understand what it means to change the narrative. We have to accumulate stories and proverbs, as Omid was saying before. We have to steep ourselves in, there's not a single lineage in any of our religious traditions. not a single lineage, but there is a lineage of love, active love. There is a lineage of nonviolence. There is a lineage that sees systemic violence and violence in general as the very thing our religious traditions were born to overcome. And as people grow and evolve and move, we can draw on those lineages to help us envision and live into that future. We have to maintain self-healing, and we have to think of ourselves, everyone in this moment is on the front line. If we think somehow we have a long-term opportunity for privilege, that is slowly falling apart. That is being shown to not exist anymore. We are one globe, we are one humanity. And so we have to think of all of ourselves. Yes, we are here and we have to show up for what's happening because there's no escape. People in Gaza understand there is literally no place to be safe. And while we have some places where we can be safe for a moment, you can go for a walk in the beautiful woods, and certainly Gazans cannot do that. They have to find other modalities, which I would say is the most profound spiritual reality that I learned from Palestinians is hospitality. The hospitality to one's children, to one's family, to one's relatives. Welcome, come to my, creating a sanctuary. Well, the world has to be a sanctuary now because we are all in this same boat, and we have to be willing to understand that we have to dissolve those, and we have to help each other take the risks that we need to. We need to cultivate the inner strength and the courage. Nonviolence is a courageous path. And we need to cultivate our own sense of risk-taking. We have to find ourselves in the movement. Once we find our place in the movement, it will not be our place in the movement. It will be an interconnected place in the movement. And as we find our place in the movement, whether it's through tending the earth and the spirits around us, living on Turtle Island, if we are guests on Turtle Island, which most of us are, we have to understand that we need to center Indigenous people here. If we're making ceremony, if we're evolving our relationship to the land, that means land back ceremony. That means being in relationship to the people whose land we are settled upon. Well, the same is true in Palestine. Jews say we're not colonial settlers because, we have ancestry there. Well, we came as colonial settlers, and that is very easy to find out because we burnt to the ground over 500 villages and exiled into refugee camps, 750,000 people, which has grown to millions in Gaza, the most crowded place on the planet. And then we bombed the most crowded refugee camp on the planet. Please, this is an act of colonialism. And even though we have wonderful relationships to the Holy Land within our hearts and relatives, we must take the courage to understand where we are in the system. Let's do that together. Let's love each other. Let's hold each other. Let's cry together, but let us do that so we can move through that, so that we can truly dismantle Israeli apartheid, because we don't want that as our legacy. 3,000 years and this is our legacy? No, we cannot let this expression be the legacy for which we are remembered, because that will end our history. So I'm very glad to see the movement rising. The movement is rising. There are, in 2008, with Operation Cast Lead, I felt very, very lonely. And before that, from, back from 1966, when I first learned about, there has been no one out there hardly. But now the movement has grown. So let's all take this risk together. We can love each other through this as we break apart the system which is violently hurting us. And we can protect Palestinians who have the right to life. They have any other choice is immoral and unethical. There's just no way getting around that. If you don't support a ceasefire, you are giving your okay to genocide. And that is not a Jewish point of view. And if it becomes a Jewish point of view or anybody's point of view, we might as well kiss our humanity goodbye. So let us do this beautiful, hard work for which we were created. Let us do it together. Inshallah.
Amen. Amen. May it be so. Thank you so much, Rabbi Lynn. I'm heartened to turn to you, Brother Omid, to ask you to speak about the heart. Will you share with us about radical love and the wisdom of the ancient mystics, especially perhaps ones that experienced persecution?
Thank you so much, my friends, brother and sisters. I want to come back to one of the great beacons of love that this world has ever known, Maulana Rumi. Rumi lived at a time where what historians sometimes call the Mongol Holocaust wiped away 10% of the world's population. That's the world into which he was born. His family fled the Mongols as they came, and they slaughtered and they wiped and they decimated. And in some ways, 700, 800 years later, the Middle East still has not recovered fully. The violence that they unleashed upon the soil and the water canals, the Qanat system, has still not healed. The Middle East didn't used to be a deserty place. It was verdant. It was filled with fields and gardens. And in the midst of all that horror, and do we dare say, because of that horror, Rumi was able to stand up, expand his wings, open up his broken heart, and become a conduit of love that links together earth and heaven, God and humanity. And we're still drinking from him and from the channels that he's opened up for us. He loves to talk about the earth as our mother. He loves to talk about we've come from God and we're going back to God. And in very similar languages, the Sufis say we come from the mother and we're going back to the embrace of the mother. It's showing the divinity of the earth. Rumi at one point has this profound thing to say, which for all of us who care about the earth, as we care about heaven, he says, the earth is the body of the prophet. Right? I mean, think about the love that I as a Muslim have for the Prophet Muhammad, and Christians would have for Jesus, and Buddhists would have for the Buddha. How I walk on the earth, how I live in harmony with the earth, how I toil the earth is how I would behave towards the body of the prophet. So we got to take these teachings to heart. And I think I just want to end by talking about something that may seem quite distant from all this talk about love, and that's fear. There's a lot of fear in the air on all sides. And the most demonic people that I know, not personally, thank God, know how to weaponize fear and trauma to get folks to line up behind them and okay the massacres that they plan on doing. Here's one of the reasons why we need each other, and we need the wisdom of each other, and we need the stories and the songs of each other. Here's what my Sufi ancestors, my Muslim ancestors are so good at. Rumi says, love and fear don't go together. Choose if you're going to walk the path of love or if you're going to choose the path of fear. The Sufis who love great one-liners, you know, when they would be summoned in front of a tyrannical king who could chop their head off at any moment, people would ask him, aren't you afraid? And the response was, I love this, the dead do not fear death. Right? They've already died to their ego. What can this little petty tyrant do to them? Kill them, they're going to be with God. Exile them, they're going to have a chance to see the vastness of God's earth. Put them in a prison, more time to pray and meditate. Right? And that's a liberated being. And my heart sings to that. And it also sings with a more tender, a softer, and I would say more maternal sense, which is, damn straight I'm afraid. And I'm afraid not because of what could happen to me. I'm afraid of what could happen to my babies. Because I do have a weakness in this world. I'm not some fearless superhero walking around spreading love and standing up for justice. No, I'm able to love my babies because my heart is most open to them. I couldn't love if I wasn't vulnerable. And I know that I don't have a monopoly on this. I know that other mamas and other babas love their babies every bit as much as I love mine. So part of, I think, what we're called for is to do the right thing, to stand up for justice and for truth, to base it in love, even when we're afraid. To do so when our voice is shaking. That's probably the most honest thing that I can say in these times. I know from my own experience that in the last month and in the last 20 years, whenever I have said, what about these 3,500 babies? What about the occupation? What about what the ACLU and Desmond Tutu and Vincent Harding and others have called an apartheid? The response is immediately anti-Semitism. Part of me says, you know, how closely have some people come to connect their sense of belonging to this beautiful tradition filled with so much love, so much wisdom, so much light, to a system of tyranny and oppression that you're criticizing the tyranny and they hear it as criticizing their faith. So I think I'll just pause there. Yes to love. Yes to radical love. Yes to love in God and humanity in one breath, in every breath at the same time. Yes to have that love start with those who are the most vulnerable, and to do so when we're not at our best, to do so when we're feeling weak in the knees. And one of the antidote is to not be alone, to reach out, to lean in on one another, knowing that we don't need to have had the same lineage and the same genealogy to be able to love and support each other.
Thank you, dear brother Mead. There's so many strands that I want to respond to, and all the things that all of you are sharing, and you know, so many seeds being planted through the things that we're sorting through and being in the tension with. And I know that this moment is a life-changing moment for me, and this conversation is a soul-stretching conversation for me. And I'm going to direct the next question to Dr. Teresa, but first I want to go a little bit deeper into why I think that this question is so important. Teresa, you're someone that works on my body, that has been working on my body and my system for many years now, and have been an integral part of many of the transformations that I've gone through in reconciling my own PTSD and my own inner trauma to be able to actually step into whatever the moment is asking of me, and to be able to embody whatever truth is coming online for me and being realized for me, to actually be able to walk on the earth in that way. So you've witnessed and supported and directly played a role in real transformation that I've experienced. And you worked on me in the past 3 weeks, and you have my permission, if it feels aligned, to speak about the transformation that you are witnessing, but more than just about me, right? You work on bodies to support transformation ongoing. And one of the things that I know that neuroscience is really starting to put information out about is understanding how this transformation actually works in the mind-body system, and how we can come from being a traumatized people, of being a victim of these systems of oppression, and not become like those that have harmed us, whether that be violence that was experienced, intimate partner violence, or systemic violence. You worked on people to how to come into a place of self-realization, so that our energy and our focus and our life force is concentrated not just on battling with the thing, but actually moving beyond something and still being able to be in opposition to it. And I'm very curious for you to speak in whatever way you feel to about our bodies as a miracle, and how we, within ourselves, our own ecosystem, our own copy of the universe within our own systems, how can we make that transformation real? And I know that it involves a nervous system and our energy system. And I know for the courage and the wisdom to actually be able to take form, to take hold, and for that transformation not to just be ideological, but to actually be complete, such that we can share it with other people and live from that place. From that place, I would really love you to talk about how this transformation happens in the body and the work that you've done with people. And I know that you have a particular focus in supporting marginalized people. And so you see a lot happen in the body of individual people. And we recognize that there are people right now that are going through, in this moment, real trauma. And for those of us that are here to help other people heal from their trauma, I would love you to talk a little bit about just the mechanisms behind that work, so that we can bring that forth.
Yeah.
So that's my question to you.
Thank you, Miriam. Yes, I'm loving the conversations today about the earth and how we are. The earth is as mother and also as the body of the prophet. That's beautiful as well. For me, the body is very much this part of the earth that each of us has been given to personally steward in our lifetime. And the mystery of the body is really my shortest answer to your question, Miriam, is that there is room for justice and righteousness, for something to be wrong and need to end or need to change, even at the same time that there is no condemnation of that part. There is no dehumanization of that part. And our nervous system is so interesting. What we know about our nervous system in terms of neuroscience is so much of the parts that are defined and certain describe the fear axis, describe our physiological response to trauma and threat. And there's a whole other part of our nervous system that is often just sort of labeled with rest and digest, whatever that means. We don't really know too much about that. And in the last 10 years or so, there has been more in neuroscience about that whole other half of our system that generates nutrients and resources and things like that. But to me, it's also not an accident that it's not super defined, because it is really our incarnation of the mystery of mothering, as Brother Omi has said. There is room in our bodies for the unknown and for uncertainty, to not just be something we tolerate, but be something that is a place of homecoming for us. And I think often when you have been describing in the last few weeks, particularly about moving into and stretching into a new calling or a new role, it is that push-pull of identifying the places that can no longer be without knowing what the next thing is just yet. And I think what is out there right now is a lot of information about nervous system dysregulation and the ways that our bodies kind of move into fight or flight and shut down and all of those things. There's a lot of information out there about that. And I guess what I can offer today is that is not a bad thing, is not something to be feared, is not a sort of hard stop in our ability to live and take our next breath and be ourselves. That reaction and that response is our cue to, as Taya was saying, slow down, right? It is our cue to stop, but it's not a stop forever. It's a stop for a moment, because things need to change, things need to break down for a moment, things need to unwind and even dismember, is what it feels like sometimes on the inside. And that a cultivation of this whole other half of our nervous system that is sort of an incarnation of the mystery, as I said, a cultivation of our relationship with that is really a cultivation of our relationship with the mystery of life. And when we talk about love and that as a moving and guiding force, it's a way for us to embody that, is for us to really become so intimately familiar with the mystery in us, with the oh no, I don't know I feel uncertain. I feel scared. I feel scared. And that there are ways in which we, especially in the US, are so programmed, and our stories are so centered and anchored with sort of pushing past our fear. And then as others have said today, maybe an alternative response is, oh, that's my signal to stop and avoid and never go there again. And it just feels like we are at a time when we've got some growing up to do, when the option is not to just stop and avoid, and the option also is not to run over ourselves either. We are seeing the explicit consequences of that. And so it's like, what is another option there? And for me, in terms of the nervous system, so much of it is a reprogramming of how to not push past our limits, but to become so intimate with them, to be able to feel where that is, that excruciating or maybe exquisite point of I'm going to break a little bit past here, and can I breathe and stay here? Again, appreciated, Taya, your description of the interactions you've had with the meanness, where you can be hurt and also be you still, right? So much of the nervous system dysregulation has us sort of like shifting away out of our bodies, or we're not ourselves, or things are shut down. And for me, the way that we can actually heal and develop the new skills that we need as a species is to develop our nervous system to a place where we can not just tolerate, but also, as I said, really come to understand these limits and the fears, and really come to see them not as fun, but as a resource, as a place, just like our differences, as a place where our solutions lie, because it's not working. Like, what we know, the decisions we know how to make are insufficient. And the body is actually quite capable of an incredible amount of complexity. And the way that our minds, especially our sort of thinking and categorizing, the categorizing parts of our minds, think that there's more complexity to be held here than there is here, we're just getting to the end of that story. We're at the end of that story. There's so much more that complexity that our bodies can hold and teach our thinking. And I feel like that's where we are at this point in terms of what we need to learn. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. And I'm hearing that a few people need to transition. So I just wanted to honor so much your presence, your time, your words, your care, your work in the world, what is seen and unseen. So grateful to be in community with you all. I've learned so much. I'll be integrating all of that in my heart and my being and how I move. And I will be in touch with those of you that need to transition out. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Lynn. Thank you so much, Brother Omid.
Much, much love. Always love.
Bye. Shabbat Shalom, Taya.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi Lynn.
So just to share a tiny piece on how this panel and conversation arrived, I was, as many people, overcome with the heartbreak and not quite sure what to do with it, not quite sure how to process it or be with it. And often how that would come out is in the middle of the night, waking up in the middle of the night and just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And when it's not that the sobbing is finished, because it still has moments in my day where that just comes. And I've given myself permission to just cry as needed, as one of my ways of that I heal myself, is to just let the tears come. And one night when there was a break from the crying, I had this very clear idea drop in, which it said, "We belong to the land." And it was as a resounding knowing that I have no idea where it came from. And I knew that this was a confirmation for me that my role in the revolution is very connected and tied into something that's transforming within the earth and within the land, that I'm a part of that belonging. And I was so curious about this that I decided to just do a quick search online to see what might arise. And this book, "We Belong to the Land," was the first thing that popped on. And it is the story of a Palestinian Israeli who lives for peace and reconciliation. And so that was a direct confirmation for me about the conversation that I've been speaking to, that I'm deeply engaged in with the earth. And I'm looking forward to reading this book. It just arrived today, actually. But that was the indication for me that it was ready for me, that I was ready for next steps, that I was ready to do something outward focused, that I'd gathered, just enough of the transformation that needed to happen within myself, that now the first seeds of it are ready to be planted forward. And that started multiple conversations with me, with, Palestinian friends of mine, other people in the region, neighbors and friends, and people in my life. And I've been so deeply immersed in those conversations. And within the tension of the differences, of the not agreeingness, of not seeing it the same way, or even not seeing it the same way. And at the end of the conversation, having shared enough that, someone was able to see my perspective, and I was able to see their perspective. And those are the types of seeds that I want to plant in the earth. And I think sometimes with people that don't work directly with the earth, working with the earth can seem whimsical or ethereal. But, the person who I'm turning the conversation over to next knows better than I do directly that there is deep truth that comes from stewarding the earth. And that I believe, the reason that I believe that the struggle for liberation for Palestinian people is directly parallel to my work with earth stewardship, is because I believe that, the people who are indigenous to lands, that they hold a particular type of wisdom that they have kept sacred, that they have kept safe, because they've been stewarding the land. And that is a sacred vow and agreement that I know that all humans have, but all humans have not been honoring and have not been living from that place. So again, when I say that I see the action or the behavior of uprooting the olive tree, I recognize that it's that force, those forces that will direct their hatred and direct their destruction at those who are deeply connected to the land, as a way to also harm the earth. And that's when my spidey senses kind of turn on, because I work directly with that harm in the earth. And so to see it happening now, I'm very curious about planting the seeds with the children, so that even if I can't, my resounding no and my wish for a ceasefire, inshallah, that has impact. But where I know that I have direct impact is to be able to look at how the experiences that we've had if we can allow ourselves to be in relationship with the earth, that those experiences can be healed and transformed and transmuted, because as we've already spoken about, something changes when we are in relationship with the earth. And so my dear collaborator, Wally, I would love you to close out this conversation with talking about what seeds are you planting as someone who's deeply worked with the earth and someone who's deeply engaged with this moment, someone who's had their heart broken open in this moment. What seeds are you planting in the earth? Thank you.
A few days ago, I saw a aerial photo, like a satellite photo of Gaza after the bombing and invasion. And of course, we've all been feeling the devastation of humanity in the conflict that's happening. But what struck me with that aerial photo was the land, pockmarked with bombs, tanks running over agricultural fields. What we do to the earth makes an impression upon the earth. So it becomes our responsibility to ask, what sort of seeds do we want to plant? Before I answer that question, there was another question that Mariam had asked of me, which was, if the earth could speak, what would she be saying at this moment? And of course, the earth does speak if you have the ears to listen. And what I'm about to share is not intended to be a full answer, because I think we're each going to hear different things. But the earth is asking us to slow down and deeply listen. Listen to her cry, and also to revel in the miracle of life. The earth is asking us to realize that everything is alive, even those things that aren't normally considered to be alive by Western science, named inanimate. They're not inanimate. They too have life. And she's asking us to realize that everything is alive and is impregnated with the divine. And she's asking us to remember that all beings, seen and unseen, are interdependent parts of a unified whole, the one and only being, the one to whom we all belong. And she's asking us to help each other recognize these things. She's asking us to show gratitude and respect and care for all beings. And she's asking us to unite as humanity in prayer and in action, and to learn with how to live in love and in harmony. So the seeds that you sow, excuse me, must be found in the depth of your heart. I can't say what seeds need to be sown for you. Only you know that. And each of those seeds is unique. Each of those seeds is your gift to give. But if we plant those seeds together, we make a garden. And we can make a beautiful garden. So what I ask of you right now is just take a moment of silence and look deep into your heart and ask yourself, what seeds are there that are waiting to be sown? What seeds do you wish to plant in this earth? May all of our seeds flourish and grow and bring abundant harvest. Thank you.
I'm so grateful for all of you. And I also want to share what the earth has been saying to me. After many days of tuning in and waiting for a message, and the days that I was silent because she was silent. So I was attuning to her in the ways that I know, that I've been asked to. And what I hear her saying is, tune in, she said. Stay focused. Believe in yourself. Remember why you came here. Remember our sacred agreements. Maintain your sovereignty. See, feel, know, and be the truth. Stay in your body. You're being helped. She said, please pray for the children who have been sacrificed, but let their souls have peace. Do not use them for your agendas. Remember to mourn their sacred memory into the future and help heal the ones that have been traumatized. She said the amount of pain that is being inflicted will need love from the whole human family to heal. And she said, you are part of the solution, and it can start today, and all can come together for the greater good. So that is my commitment. That is my role in the revolution. And also, she ended with, Mother loves you all unconditionally in spite of yourselves, which, yeah, just really broke me open. So yeah, and honoring my agreements to the earth, and honoring my agreements to my teachers and all those that have come before me. I've been given my assignment, and and then I was given many other assignments and directions, including creating the opportunity for this panel conversation and potentially other panel conversations. And I want to recognize that, this conversation was put together with an intention and a wish and a hope and a desire, and that there are many other conversations that need to be had. And I want to let people know that are watching this back that there will be a resource list, and that resource list will include resources to be able to hear directly from the voices of Palestinian people, because I do not represent the voice of Palestinian people. I am someone who, again, my work, I hope in some way, is in service to the liberation of Palestinian people. And that's why I'm here. And the resource list will provide information, historical information, again, places where you can hear these voices directly. And I encourage you to listen to many different types of voices. Certain voices in certain places are very loud, they're very outspoken, they're very clear, and they are, the throat chakra is very open, right? And other voices are quieter, and they are, they also have something to share. And some voices you will only hear if you allow yourself to be silent. So my encouragement and invitation is to listen to all different types of voices, and then to find your voice and find your sacred work and your sacred purpose in the world, because it is when we all do and remember and embody what we're here to do together that we can truly make a transformation happen. And I am someone that believes that there are many different agreements that we have. Some people are on the front lines, some people are supporting people on the front lines, some people are deeply in prayer, some people are channeling the energy that needs to heal the planet, or heal our relationship with the planets, I should say, and many more. And you may have a role that you've been asked to play. And in this moment, if you are being authentic and in relationship with life and the moment, you will be asked to do something different, such as myself. I have a pretty significant social media platform, and often the very obvious thing is for me to use my platform to speak. And I was asked to sit in silence and meditation and sacred witnessing. So again, be open to the call that is coming for you, that will be in deep relationship with your gifts, your skills, your capacity, and also what is most authentic for you in your relationship with life and for your growth as well, because that is also a part of this. So I'm going to also hand it to my dear beloved sister Taya to close us out.
I'm so grateful to weave with you, Mariam, and all who are here and tuning in. When I shared earlier, I offered words, when times are urgent, may we slow down. And when I slowed down, I remembered that these words are from author and scholar, thinker, Bayo Akomolafe. And when I slowed down more, I remembered really important dots that I wanted to connect from my earlier sharing, which is that in moments of atrocity, what I came to learn in places where atrocity has happened, what I came to learn is we truly cannot hold anything of this magnitude on our own. And this is a time of such devastation that it is impossible, a time of such magnitude that it is impossible to hold the pieces on our own, as has been spoken. And in that vein, what I'm aware of again and again when I go to pray is I'm someone who loves prayer, who has prayer just flowing from me usually. And in these times, I'm clear that my prayer may be enough, but what's needed is the prayer of so many. And so for our closing prayer today, I am sharing words woven from each of our speakers. The wisdom that you each have crafted, I have called into a blessing as I was listening to you. And so our prayer comes from the words of the wisdom here. May we grieve loudly. May we tune in to the wisdom of our bodies. May we know unconditional love, and may our love overflow, and may it become justice. And may we transform the world through this love. May those who want to build a different world hold on to the luminosity of every single life and shine the light unflinchingly on injustice and systemic violence. May we show up for justice and truth, and may we base our showing upness in love even when we are afraid, even and especially when our voices are shaking. May this love begin toward those who are the most vulnerable. May we love when we are not at our best, when we are weak in the knees, and may we not be alone. May we remember that all beings, seen and unseen, are parts of a unified whole. May we show gratitude and respect and care for all beings. May we sow seeds of lasting peace in the depths of our hearts, and may they flourish, grow, and bring abundant harvest. May we listen deep and receive the messages from the earth, from the ocean, the mountains, our more than human world kin, and our creature teachers, our plant ancestors, toward how to create and to be true peace. May we remember why we came here. Amin, amin. Inshallah. May it be so. thank you for your presence here and for tuning in. And thank you, Mariam, for the potence and the grace of this space.